Hi students, welcome to video lecture on elementary level of English communication, sentence construction and voices of verb as part of pre-placement training. This is Vidya V, placement coordinator of phase 2, Dr. MGR Educational and Research Institute. So what is a sentence? A sentence is a group of words that has a complete and independent thought and contains two essential elements, subject and predicate. What is the subject? Subject is the doer of the action or the one being talked about in a sentence. So as you can see in the example, Jane went home late. So Jane is the subject. So she is doing something. So she went home late. So Jane is the doer of the action. So Jane is the subject of this sentence. Next example, Meera is the smartest student in our class. So Meera is the subject again, but she is being talked about. So these are examples of subject in a sentence. So subject is nothing but doer of the action or the one being talked about. So what is predicate? Predicate is the information about the subject. So it is composed of a group of words that states what the subject is or does. Example again, Jane went home late. So Jane is the subject, but what is the action she is doing? Went home late. So that is the predicate of a sentence. Meera is the smartest student in our class. So Meera is being talked about, but what is she being talked about? People are saying that she is the smartest student. So the smartest student, that is called as predicate of the sentence. Next, let's see the difference between a phrase and a clause. So phrase is a group of words but does not have a subject. So smashing into a door, before the first test, after the devastation. So there is no subject here. So who smashed into the door? So before whose first test and after whose devastation. So we're not talking about a subject here. So this is like a phrase. Whereas clause is a group of words which has a subject and a verb and they are related. So since she laughs at jokes, so she is laughing at jokes. So they are related and there is a subject and a verb and there is some action. So this is a clause. When the exams were going on, because she smiled at him. So these are clauses. So there are basically two types of clauses, independent and dependent. So independent clause is a group of words that can stand on its own as a sentence. It contains a subject, a verb and a complete thought. For example, he ran fast. So this is a complete sentence. So we know we're talking about someone, he is running fast, he ran fast. So we can understand the meaning of the sentence. And I was late to work. So you can understand by reading it that it is independent and it has a subject, it has a verb and it has a complete thought. So we know that you know that I was late to work. So a sentence, a clause which can stand on its own is called as independent clause. Example. Next is dependent clause. So dependent clause is a group of words which also has a subject and a verb, but it is not a complete thought, which means it cannot stand on its own. So as the name suggests, it has to depend on another clause or an independent clause to form a sentence. Because I woke up late in the morning. So if we leave it like that, we don't know what happened because I woke up late in the morning. Next is when I arrived in class. What occurred when I arrived in the class? So this is a dependent clause. So because I woke up late in the morning, something happened. If you complete it, then only it will form a sentence. So this is dependent clause. So structurally, sentences are of four types: simple, compound, complex and compound complex. So let's see one by one. So a simple sentence has a single clause or a single verb which is obviously independent and it does not take any other clause. So it does not have another dependent or independent clause, it is just a single clause. Then it is called a simple sentence. Example, I always wanted to become a writer. So we're talking about I and it is one verb. It is a simple sentence. Some students like to study in the mornings. Alex goes to library and studies every day. So this is a single clause. It has a single verb. So this is called a simple sentence. Next type is compound sentence. So compound sentence contains two independent clauses combined by a coordinating conjunction. So you can combine two independent clauses using conjunctions like for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. There is this thought that you can memorize these conjunctions by remembering fan boys. So as you can see, the starting of the letters FANBOYS. So if you remember fan boys, you can remember the conjunctions that you can use to combine two independent clauses. So some of the examples of compound sentences: Anand played football, so Mary went shopping. So you're combining two independent clauses with a conjunction so here. Next is Sumi reads novels, but Raji reads comics. Jen took the pictures and Aaron developed them. Is the party on Friday or is it on Saturday? The third type is complex sentence. So it has one independent clause connected to a dependent clause by a subordinating conjunction such as because, since, although, when, etc. That is, you are combining an independent and a dependent. So example, since I have no milk, I have to go to the store. The teacher returned the homework after she noticed the error. The students are studying because they have a test tomorrow. So the students are studying is an independent clause, but they have a test tomorrow. Who have test tomorrow? That is a dependent clause. So you are combining both by using the conjunction because here. That's the same for all the examples. So last type is compound complex. This contains two independent clauses and a dependent clause, and you're combining that. So here we put a comma after the dependent clause if it is beginning the sentence, or we should put a comma before the and, but, or that connects two independent clauses. So for example, because it had stopped, Charlie could not hear his watch and he was worried. So here Charlie could not hear his watch is an independent clause. He was worried is an independent clause. But because it had stopped, this is a dependent clause. So you are combining one dependent and two independent. That is called as compound complex. So although Sarah called out for Charlie, no one answered and Sarah was scared. So as I told you, you put after, comma after the dependent clause and comma before the and, but, or, that is combining two independent clauses. Now the sentences are further divided into four types as declarative, imperative, interrogative and exclamatory. So the declarative sentence is like you're declaring something. So it's like an expression of a feeling, an opinion, or making a statement or describing something. Example, I'm very happy today. I'm going to submit my assignment today. I'm going to a movie tomorrow. So this is all you're declaring your opinion, your feeling, or you're going to something. These are all declarative sentences. Next is imperative. This is used to make a request or give a command. So example, please sit down. This is like you're making a request. Get out of the room. Or this is a command. So these are come under the category of imperative. So when you're making a request or giving a command, it comes as imperative sentence. Third one is interrogative. So this is like when you're asking a question. So it also always ends up with a question mark. So do you know him? Where is Taj Mahal? So you're like interrogative. So this is you're like interrogating. So it is interrogative sentence. The last one is exclamatory. So it expresses overflow of emotions like happiness, sadness, wondering, anger, etc. For example, what a day. So I cannot believe it. So these all end with an exclamation marks. So this is an exclamatory sentence. Next is voices of verb. So in traditional grammar, voices is defined as the quality of the verb that indicates whether its subject acts or is being acted upon. So it has two types, active voice and passive voice. So what is active voice? This is the normal voice which we use most of the time, and here the object receives the action of the verb. So example, Marilyn mailed the letter. So this is an active voice. It's a straight voice. You're like, Marilyn is the subject and letter is the object and mailed is the verb. So from the verb, the object is receiving the action. So subject is doing an action. So this is active voice. So passive voice is less usual. We don't use that often, but here the subject receives the action of the verb. That is the situation where we can use passive voices when we want to give more importance to the active object, then we use passive voice. So like the previous example, we saw the active voice as Merlin wrote the letter. So passive voice will be letter was mailed by Merlin. So here the subject will receive the action. So how do you convert active to passive? First, you move the active sentence's direct object into the passive sentence's subject slot. So that is, the object of the active voice will become the subject of the passive voice. So here in the example, the letter is the active voice's object. That will move into the subject of passive voice. Next, you place the subject into a phrase beginning with a preposition by into the object phase of the passive voice. So Merlin will become object in passive voice, and you have to add a preposition before it. So you cannot put any other preposition. You cannot say for, and all. So by Merlin will be the correct preposition. And the last step is you have to add a auxiliary verb in to the main verb, and then change the main verb's form. So auxiliary is was, because it was past tense. Mailed is a past tense, so you have to say was mailed. So Merlin mailed the letter will become as letter was mailed by Merlin in the passive voice. So how do you convert passive to active? So you move the passive sentence's subject into the active sentence's direct object slot. So the subject of passive voice will become the object of active, and you remove the auxiliary verb from the main verb and change the main verb's form. So letter was mailed will become mailed in active voice, and passive sentence's object will be put into the subject slot of active voice. So the letter was mailed by Merlin will become Merlin mailed the letter. So that's the end of the session, guys. Hope you all liked it. Thank you so much.